Hello everyone and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. In today's video, we will be continuing our 13 chapter series on the art of sports betting. We will be educating you on what we call the 13 pillars for turning you from a square to a sharp with similar principles to the book The Art of War. We will be providing action steps through each of the chapters so you can improve your betting approach and get you betting more responsibly. We will also add our final thoughts from the 17 years of experience that we have betting on sports. So let's get right into it. Welcome to Chapter 9, Bet Sizing. This is deploying your units with discipline. So let me remind you of something critical as a bettor. Your bankroll is your army, right? Every dollar is a soldier. And bet sizing, that's your strategy. It's the decision of how many troops you send into battle. Now, a wise commander, as Sun Tzu said, knows when to advance with full force and when to retreat strategically. That's exactly what bet sizing is about. The purpose of bet sizing is threefold. First, to protect your bankroll, because if your army is wiped out, your war is basically over. Second is to maximize your return when you have a real edge. When the time is right to strike, you strike with strength. And then third, to manage variance and emotional swings so you can stay alive long enough to let your edge play out. Bet sizing isn't just about gut feelings or this one feels like a lock. It's a structured approach to staying in the game, growing over time, and then avoiding the chaos that takes down most bettors. So, in this chapter, we're going to walk through how to size your bets like a disciplined commander and not a reckless soldier charging without a plan. So let's define what bet sizing really is. Bet sizing is deciding how much money to risk on a given wager. And here's the thing, betting isn't just about picking winners. That's only half the battle. The other half is managing risk and return. The size of your bets directly affects your bankroll's ability to survive brutal losing streaks, would be the first one. The second would be to strike big when you've got a clear plus EV opportunity. And then finally, grow steadily over time, not just in lucky stretches, but over the long haul. At its core, bet sizing answers two questions. How much should I bet on each event? And then how much should that vary depending on how confident I am or how strong my edge is? This is where a lot of bettors get it wrong. You can win more bets than you lose and still go broke if your sizing is reckless. Or you can win less than 50% and still be profitable if your sizing is smart. Bet sizing is where betting skill meets money management. This is how you stay in the fight and ultimately win the war. So before we even get into the actual bet size and strategies, we've got to talk about what the goals are. Because if you don't know what you're aiming for, how do you know which strategy actually works for you? Let's walk through the 6 goals you absolutely cannot skip when selecting a bet size and strategy. And later in this video, we're going to rank each size and method based on how well it meets these goals. Well, number 1 is going to be protecting your bankroll, or the survivability. This is non-negotiable. Your bankroll is your army. Once it's gone, there is no war to fight. So your first goal is to make sure your strategy can withstand losing streaks without wiping you out. Survivability is the foundation of everything else. Next, you're going to want to maximize your payouts or your wins. This is when you got a high confidence, a high edge play, you're going to want to capitalize. The best edges don't show up every day. So when they do, your sizing needs to reflect that. This isn't about swinging big every time. It's about getting the most value when it matters the most. Next is going to be minimizing the losses. So you can't control whether your bets win or lose, but you can control how much each loss costs you. Bet sizing that cushions that blow during cold streaks helps you stay confident, consistent, and even in control. The goal here is finding that sweet spot. You're getting paid when you win, but you're not getting gutted when you lose. Moving on to number 4 is going to be managing variance. This isn't about emotion, this is math. So a good bet size and strategy smooths out the swings so your bankroll doesn't look like a roller coaster. You want stability over time so you can stay in the game, avoid panic, and make decisions based on logic and not desperation. Let's go to number 5, which is going to be efficient long-term profitability. This is where the rubber meets the road. You're not just trying to survive, you're trying to thrive. The best strategies balance growth with risk. So that long-term profitability means your system compounds over time without exposing you to those unnecessary volatility. Next and lastly is going to be it's easy to record keep. If your strategy is too complex to track, you'll either stop tracking or worse, you'll make bad decisions based on incomplete information. Simpler strategies often win just because they're easier to manage. Clean records lead to better decisions, faster adjustments, and a clearer picture of what's working. So remember, these 6 goals are how we'll be ranking each size and strategy later in the video. Don't overthink it. Some of the simplest strategies are often the most profitable. The key is choosing one that checks these boxes, helps you grow, and keeps you in the fight for the long term. All right, so before we get into the actual strategies, let's talk units. And this is the language of every serious sports bettor. And the more you get into this world, the more you'll hear it. So, a unit is just a percentage of your bankroll used to size your bets. Keeps everything consistent and protects you from making emotional decisions. Now, even though people toss around units loosely, here's how we define them at Grandstand Sports Data and how we recommend you structure yours. So, first, we're going to start with the 1% play or conservative approach. And for those that don't understand what we're saying, you can just look down at the bottom at the example on a $1,000 bankroll. 1 unit or 1% would equal that $10 bet. And then you can obviously do the math for the others. For 2% would be $20, 3% $30, and so on and so forth. So let me just tell you what you can use your 1% play for. Well, it's a conservative approach and it should be used for like futures, props, and long shots. We also put some parlays here, but here at Grandstand Sports Data, usually we do our parlays on a half a unit. So it would be $5 instead of the $10 that you see according to a $1,000 bankroll. Some of you guys may have more of a bankroll, some of you guys have less, but the percentages remain the same. Moving on, a 2% play would be moderately conservative. And this is great for when you're testing maybe a new sport, a new bet type, or you're just going through maybe a cold streak. And then you would go more of a 2% play. Your 3% plays, this is more moderate. This could be your standard everyday bet. You basically your bread and butter. And here at Grandstand Sports Data, that's our standard play, a 3% bet. Now, if you want to move to 4%, this is reserved for those moderately aggressive plays, the 4%. They're reserved for the plays where you got a strong confidence based on your process. And remember the process that we talked about earlier in these videos. The process comes from your handicapping style, right? You may be fundamentals, you may be technical. You should be a mix of both. And then if your sport is in a big market, you should be doing market analysis. So I'm saying that if enough of those variables check off a certain specific team, certain specific side, whatever it is, that may be considered a high confidence play, and you may bump it up to 4%. Now, what will make you take it up to 5%? Well, this is rare. This is when all those handicapping variables that I was talking about, so for technical, statistical, fundamental, market analysis, everything is checking off this team or this certain prop, whatever it is, it's checking all the boxes. That's when you hit them with the 5% play. So that's what you will hear around the sports betting community. I have a 5% play on the Green Bay Packers. You know, just from hearing that, coming into this world of sports betting, that he's putting a sizable bet on the Green Bay Packers. He feels really good about Green Bay. It's basically what it's coming down to. So the goal here isn't necessarily to get flashy. It's just basically to stay consistent, stay disciplined, and in control. Use the structure when you apply your strategy, and you'll know the lingo and you'll know how to basically communicate to other bettors. That's basically what I'm trying to get across from this slide. So before we dive into the better strategies out there, we need to get one thing clear. All the rankings that you're going to see in this chapter are based on the 6 goals that we laid out earlier. Things like protecting your bankroll, managing your variance, and then also easy to record keep, right? What you're about to see are not necessarily textbook definitions. They're how we define these strategies here at Grandstand Sports Data, based on our experience. And a lot of bettors out there don't even realize they're using some of these approaches until it's really too late. So let's start with what to avoid first. Number 10 is going to be parlays. The definition would be combining multiple bets into one ticket. All must win or you win nothing. So you bet $10 on a three-leg parlay at about plus 600. If all three legs win, you turn that $10 into 70. If one leg loses, you made nothing. Some of the advantages to this approach is that it looks sexy on paper, so you can win big off of a small stake, but the disadvantages really outweigh the advantages. Some of those disadvantages are you're stacking risk. One mistake wipes it all out. You lose any margin of error, which is going to kill your bankroll survivability. And that was our number one goal, right? And this goes against every core principle that we're teaching here, especially when it comes to managing variance. So when do you use parlays? I would say almost never. The only time I'll ever consider using them is if two of my highest confidence bets, so those 5% plays we were talking about earlier, both sit around minus 200. And I want to kind of juice the return a little bit. But even then, it's extremely rare, and we don't play parlays, and we recommend that you do not as well. Coming in at number 9 is going to be the Martingale system. And this is when you double your bet every time you lose until you win, and then you reset. Here at Grandstand Sports Data, we kind of look at it as a daily approach instead. Maybe you're betting $10 today on a Monday, and tomorrow when you open up your account on Tuesday, you see that you have less money. Well, that means that the $10 bet is going to turn into $20 bets today to try to recoup those losses. Not necessarily the best thing to do, right? Well, the advantages to using this style is that you can erase those losses a little bit more quickly than other styles. But the disadvantage is that you can blow through your bankroll much faster than you think. One bad streak and you are toast. So it's emotionally brutal and statistically reckless to use this strategy. When should you use it though? I would say never. Seriously, just don't. You're not a casino whale, you're a strategic bettor. Stay away from the Martingale system. And that's going to lead us to our next system, which is the Fibonacci system. And this is when you increase bet sizes based on the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on and so forth. And you can have that represent your units in betting. So on the first day, you're betting all your 1 unit plays. Maybe it's $10. And if you lose, you're going to move on to tomorrow, which you will stay at that $10. Now, if you lose again in that day and you move on to the next day, you're going to be betting $20 on each game. You lose again, you take that 2 plus that 1, so the last 2 days in the sequence, which were 1 unit and 2 unit, it's going to add to 3 units now. So it's going to be $30 and so on and so forth. So the advantages here is that it's more of a gentler martingale system. It increases aren't necessarily too aggressive. It gives you a sense of structure and can reduce sharp emotional reactions. Some of the disadvantages, though, is that it's still dangerous and long losing streaks. Eventually, you're risking way too much just to even break even. It's not about value, it's just chasing recovery. When should you use this? Again, just like Martingale, never. The math doesn't favor this approach in the long term. So look, if you've used any of these before, don't beat yourself up. We've all made those mistakes. Some of these strategies disguise themselves as logic, right? Especially when you're chasing or trying to feel in control. But these don't meet our core goals. They'll ruin your bankroll faster than any losing streak ever will. So let's keep it real and get into the more interesting strategies in the next slide. All right, folks. Now that we've talked about the strategies to avoid, let's go over to that gray area, right? The ones that we call questionable. That doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that they're conditional. They can work in the right hands, but they're not one size fits all approaches. Let's walk through 4 of the more commonly debated bet sizing systems. Number 7 is going to be the D'Alembert system. And this is when you increase by 1 unit after a loss, or after a losing day, and decrease by 1 unit after a winning day. So if you lose on day 1 your $10 bets, you move up to $20 the next day. If you win on that day, you'll drop back down to that $10. Some of the advantages to this system is that it's slower, it's more controlled increase in terms of helping protect your bankroll. It's good at smoothing variance during losing streaks. And it's easy to track. It's very clean and a step-by-step system. Some of the disadvantages, though, is that it's also slow. Just like I mentioned in the pros, it's slow. You'll grind out those small wins and recover slowly from those losing streaks. It doesn't give you that upside on hot runs. It's not designed to grow your bankroll aggressively. So when should you use this? I would say that if your main focus is survivability, this might be for you. It's a decent system when you're trying to keep your head above water during some rough stretches, but it's not necessarily built for that long-term growth that we're looking for. So that leads us to number 6, and that's the Paroli system. And this is the exact opposite of the D'Alembert system. You increase by 1 unit after winning days, and then you decrease after losing days. Now, here's the example. This is the opposite, right? You win on your $10 bets on day 1. That means on day 2, you're going to start betting $20. You win again, that means you're going to increase to $30 on the next day. If you lose, you're going to drop back to 10. That's how it works. Now, what are the advantages to that? Well, it helps ride hot streaks without risking big losses during cold spells. It's also going to keep variance smooth and manageable. It's going to be easy to scale up or down depending on your confidence. Some of the disadvantages is it's going to depend a lot on winning streaks, which are unpredictable. It doesn't factor in odds, value, or edge, which is basically just emotion. And then you can't build consistent profitability around something that depends on momentum. When is the best time to use the Paroli system? Well, it might work for short bursts or in niche markets. But if you're trying to grow a long-term bankroll, this probability isn't the answer. Let's move on to number 5, which is going to be proportional betting. And this is betting according to the odds for your selected games. So you put 5% on the game with the best odds. And what I would say is, say if you had 3 bets, one at minus 110, one at plus 100, and one at plus 110, your 5% play would go to your minus 110, your 4% play will go to your plus 100, and then your 3% play will go to your plus 110. That's how you would do it. Now, what are the advantages to using the proportional betting system? Well, it's going to help you allocate more units where the numbers give you the best shot. It's going to smooth out variance by reducing exposure on lower value spots. And then finally, it's easy to automate and track based on odds and expected value. Some of the disadvantages, though, for the system is that if your biggest bet loses, you could risk a large portion of your bankroll just in one spot. And finally, it doesn't always align with your confidence level, just the odds data. So when should you use this? It's going to be solid for value bettors who rely heavily on models or projections. If you don't trust your gut and want to follow the math, this one is something to look at. But be ready for those big swings. Finally is going to be confidence betting. And this is a little bit different from proportional betting. This is when bet size is based on how confident you are using your record keeping and past data. An example is that if your records include confidence levels, proven Z scores, and consistently showing the ability to differentiate between a 5% and a 1% play, you're going to be using a confidence based betting approach. Some of the advantages to this is that if you're betting more when the data backs you, that's a good thing. It's going to cut off reckless bets because confidence is earned, not necessarily guessed. It's also going to minimize losses and variance by scaling down on lower confidence plays. And then it's excellent for long-term profit because if your record keeping is legit, so will your bet size. Some of the disadvantages to this approach, though, is that you have to earn this one. If you don't have a deep log or past bets and results, you're going to be just guessing and you're going to get smoked. Now, it can still cause swings if you got multiple 5% confidence plays at once, and that could be really bad for your bankroll. Now, when should you use it? This is the go-to for seasoned bettors with strong tracking habits. So if you're serious about optimizing your unit sizes and playing the long game, this is the strategy that belongs in your arsenal. Now, look, every strategy that we just covered have some strengths and have some landmines. The key takeaway is this: no strategy works without self-awareness and discipline. If you're someone who tracks bets, understands your edges, and wants to play long term, some of these can be adapted. But if you're not keeping records or blindly applying these without context, you're setting yourself up for failure. Coming up next, we get into the best of the best, the top ranked bet size and strategies that actually check every box on our goals list. Right, now we've arrived at the part everyone should really pay attention to. It's the top 3 bet size and strategies that actually check the boxes across the board. They are what we recommend at Grandstand Sports Data, and they form the core successful bankroll management for most bettors, depending on their level of experience. So let's break them down. Since we're talking about level of experience, the first one is going to be fixed betting, and this is good for beginners. Definition's obvious. It's you're betting the exact amount every single time. Whether it's $10 on a game, $25 on a game, that doesn't necessarily change no matter what the circumstances are. We would recommend here at Grandstand Sports Data, do 3% of your bankroll to start out. If you're doing 1,000, that'd be $30 on every single game, and you wouldn't adjust that number until you get to your assessment days. We'll talk about assessment days much more in the record keeping chapter. Now, the advantages to the fixed approach is that it's simple and it's stress free. You don't need to recalculate, second guess, or even react to variance. Number two, in terms of its advantages, is going to be it's extremely stable. It's perfect if you're learning or testing your emotions as a bettor. Number three, it's going to be minimized damage during cold streaks because the size never increases. And then finally, it's going to be best for testing a system. It helps isolate whether your system works without bet sizing influencing the result. Some of the disadvantages to this approach is that you're leaving potential profit on the table during hot streaks or when your edge is big. The final disadvantage would be that long-term bankroll growth is a little bit slower than more of those dynamic strategies that we showed you. When should you use this? Just like I said earlier, fixed betting approach should be used by beginners. This one's going to be for you. If you can't succeed with fixed betting, you're not ready to move on to anything else. This is going to be your betting push-up. It trains discipline. Also, this is the go-to method for testing your system. So this is where we're going to introduce ghost betting as well, which means placing pretend bets using the same fixed strategy without actually risking money. You're going to log the picks, log the results, and then test your edge. We'll go deeper on that topic in our record keeping chapter coming up next. Now, number two is going to be the Kelly criterion. We're talking more quarter Kelly. We'll get into the definition coming up forward, but let's take a look at some of the just the main definition of Kelly criterion. And this is the mathematical formula that calculates how much you should bet based on your edge and the odds. So it's basically how confident you are in your numbers. An example would be your model gives a team a 60% chance to win. The market only gives them a 50%. Well, you're going to have a formula that tells you what to do with that 10% edge according to your bankroll. Now, what are the advantages here to the Kelly criterion? Well, it maximizes profit when your edge is real. It's also going to be built for long-term profitability. It mathematically grows your bankroll the fastest over time, better than any other strategy. Finally, it's going to adjust dynamically to both edge and the bankroll size. What are some of the disadvantages, though, for Kelly criterion? Well, if you don't modify it, it can tell you to bet way too much, especially on those strong edges, which can blow up your bankroll over time or during losing streaks. The next one would be it requires strong confidence in your edge. So without data or a model to prove your edge, this can be risky. And finally, it has emotional swings can still happen if you're not necessarily careful. So when should you use it? We here at Grandstand Sports Data would recommend using the quarter Kelly approach. You just divide the result of the formula that it gives you by 4. It gives you the benefits of Kelly without those wild swings. So most pro or expert level bettors automate this in Excel, or they even use some calculators online. And that's where it really shines. You can just plug in the edge and the odds and it does the work for you. Now, let's move on to number 1 and basically the best bet size and strategy according to us here at Grandstand Sports Data. It's going to be percentage betting. And this is you bet a fixed percentage of your bankroll every single time. Let's say you're using 3% plays. If your bankroll is 1,000, you bet $30. And if you lose, now your bankroll is 970, which means your next bet will be about $29.10. So what are the pros to this approach or the advantages? Well, it's got bankroll protection. You're never betting more than you should. Also, it smooths out variance. Your bet size automatically shrinks during a cold streak, and then it grows during hot ones. And finally, it's very easy to track and record. You don't need to overthink things. So what are the disadvantages now, right? We've seen a pattern here. All the advantages some of these have, they also have disadvantages. Well, the disadvantages to the best bet size and strategy is that it doesn't capitalize as aggressively on your biggest edges. Every bet gets the same percentage regardless of the confidence. A way to combat that, though, is to go back to our unit slide when we describe to you what we put in different units. Like our futures are 1% plays, some of the ones that hit all the variables are 5%. That's a way to combat that. So just keep that in mind. And finally, the last disadvantage for this system is that it may feel too passive for experienced bettors looking to scale up faster. So, when should you use it? This is perfect for intermediate bettors who have graduated from that fixed betting approach and want a structure without the complexity of that Kelly criterion. It's also very similar to that unit-based scale we shared earlier with 1% for low confidence and 5% for all the variables aligning. So it's going to allow for clean record keeping and avoids emotional betting while still adapting to your bankroll. Now, remember, you don't want bet sizing to eat up your time. You still need that time for handicapping, line watching, and prepping your edges. So whatever strategy you choose, make sure it's sustainable and fits your workflow. Now, we have a video walking through all 10 of these bet sizing strategies using real bets. And if you haven't seen that one yet, it's a must watch. We're going to put a link in the description down below. And then let us know in the comment section also down below, would you like us to dive deep into each of these strategies that you have seen? Or maybe you'll want to, another second head-to-head showdown between those 10 strategies. We will show you the results. Drop your thoughts below and remember, bet smart, track everything, and keep your bankroll in the fight. Now, since we were on the percentage based system, when do you increase to that 4%? When do you increase to that 5%? Or when do you decrease to the 2%? This is when we're going to talk about, something that separates the bettors who survive from those who flame out, and that's knowing when to reduce your bet size. Well, there's four major spots to consider scaling back. Number one is going to be losing streaks. So if you're dropping unit after unit, don't double down like a maniac. Cut your unit in half. Maybe go down about a half of a unit and ride it out. It's all about survival. Remember that. Number two would be it's low confidence in your system. Maybe your angles are off. Maybe you're reading the market wrong. It's not the time to be firing big bets. It's the time to protect your bankroll and then maybe recenter and think about things a little more. Next would be its high emotions, whether it's frustration from losses or tilt from a bad beat or even just personal stuff off the field. Take a break or lower your bet volume is very important. Emotional bets are expensive. Just remember that. And finally, hot streak euphoria, right? This one fools even sharp bettors. You're up, you're flying, and you start inflating risk thinking you can't even lose. Don't let confidence turn you into cockiness. Stick to your structure. Now, look, if you're using fixed betting, you don't even have to worry about any of this yet, right? Fixed betting is plenty good enough, but if you've graduated into using different units, scaling systems, or confidence tiers, this is when you start thinking like a real commander of your army. You don't send your full army into every battle. Sometimes you regroup, and that's how you win the war. All right, we touched on when to pull back. Now we want to talk about when do you hit the gas. Well, there are times in betting when you've earned the right to step forward and push your edge. Not emotionally, not out of greed, but because your system, your data, and your discipline say go, therefore you can increase by maybe one more unit. Here are four moments to recognize that. Well, number one would be you consistently beating closing line value. So if your bets are routinely moving the line in your direction, that's the market saying you are a sharp. And that's when you can start leaning a little bit heavier in your bet sizing. Number two would be you found specific bet types like props or even team totals that show a reliable return on investment. So you don't think you're good at them, you've got the numbers to prove it. And that's where smart bettors focus their firepower. Let's move on to number three is that you're in a soft market. And I keep preaching this throughout this whole series. And it's early season games, smaller sports, or lines that aren't really efficient yet. These are the weak spots in the sportsbook's armor. Push your edge when you know the market hasn't caught up yet. And finally is going to be number 4, you've back tested and tracked the edge. If your record keeper is loaded with reliable data and it's telling you that your angle works, that's a green light territory. Don't go full throttle, but bump the unit size up a little bit, strategically. Remember, pushing your edge doesn't mean going reckless. It means scaling smart when you've earned it. Not because you feel good, but because the results say you should. All right, let's talk about mistakes. The stuff that quietly drains bankrolls faster than a losing streak ever could, right? And number 1 is going to be obvious, chasing losses. We've all felt that one, right? One bad day and your brain whispers, just bet a little more and win it back, brother. That's a trap. Betting bigger to recover is gambling with emotion, not edge. You're not winning it back. You're digging a deeper hole. You have to remember that. Number 2 is going to be double down without reassessing the edge. This is basically you playing the Martingale strategy without realizing it. You lose, so you throw more money at the next bet, hoping to erase the pain. But if your edge isn't strong, or worse, if you're guessing, you're just magnifying the mistake. Then there's number 3, which is over betting parlays and long shots. These look great on paper because of the payout, but if you're not finding value or edge, they're just flashy ways to bleed money slowly. Keeping them in your fun money bucket and not your strategy may be the best approach. Another one may be inconsistent unit sizes. So if two bets have the same value and edge, but one gets a full unit and the other gets half, ask yourself why. That kind of inconsistency makes it impossible to measure performance honestly or track what's really working. Also, adjusting bet size midday or mid game, that could be, detrimental to you as well. You lose a couple and suddenly you're firing off bets just to feel like you're doing something. That's emotion, not logic, and it's dangerous. And here's a bonus one, right? Applying a complex strategy before you even mastered fixed betting. So if you can't stay disciplined with one unit per play, you're not ready for Kelly, or confidence scaling, or edge based tiers. Build the muscle first, then layer on complexity once your foundation is strong. Betting is hard. Don't make it harder by sabotaging your strategy with these avoidable mistakes. Bet sizing isn't just math, it's mindset. Keep it clean, stay consistent, and your bankroll will thank you. All right, let's wrap this up with some real world discipline because you can have the best strategy on paper, but without discipline, it all falls apart. The first rule is going to be you need to set your unit size in advance. Before the game start, before the hype, before your friend sends you the can't miss play, lock it in. And once you do, don't change it mid session. Not because you feel hot, not because you feel cold, that's emotion creeping in. Number 2 is that you never go over your max unit size. I don't care if the team's backup quarterback is also the coach's nephew and it's raining frogs. Don't do it. Stay within your limits. Now, let's talk about the 5 to 5% bankroll rule. Never bet more than 5% of your bankroll on a single wager, and never have more than 15% of your entire bankroll tied up into one betting session. It doesn't matter if you're using fixed betting, percentage betting, Paroli, or even the Kelly criterion. These limits apply across the board. No exceptions. Because once you go past those limits, you're not managing the bankroll, you're playing roulette with your bankroll's future. Another one now. If nothing looks good, don't bet. We say this all the time. Let me say this again for the people in the back. You don't have to bet every game. The best bettors are the ones who know when to stay out of the market. And lastly, you're going to hear me say this, track and review. And when I say review, I mean do it on assessment days. And that's when you take a step back and look at your data and evaluate your strategy. You're going to look at it both financially and performance wise. But never, and I mean never, change your bet size on non assessment days. That's going to be the gambling version of drunk texting your ex. Nothing good will ever come from it. And we're going to dive deeper into how to run assessment days in our next chapter on record keeping. But for now, stay disciplined. Bet sizing is the armor for your bankroll. Wear it right, and you'll survive battles that others don't. All right, folks, let's get into the final thoughts portion of this video. And bet sizing can feel very overwhelming, right? You hear all these strategies, all these percentages, all this talk about bankroll rules and systems. It's easy to get caught up thinking that you got to master everything overnight, right? But take it from me, someone who's been doing this for 17 years now. Don't overthink it. Your time betting should be spent where it matters most, handicapping the games, analyzing the market. That's where your edge is going to lay. Don't let bet sizing become another excuse to procrastinate or overanalyze. Set your structure, keep it simple, and then move on. Now, I'm going to be real with you. Even some of the best sports bettors on the planet, guys that are making some real money, they don't always know what's a 5% play versus a 3% play. And that sometimes includes me. Some sports I've got dialed in, others not so much. And that's okay. If you're not seeing a clear pattern in your results yet, don't beat yourself up. Just stick with the fixed betting while you build your system. And now, since you've been watching most of these videos, you're probably seeing a theme that you've heard again and again in all of these videos, and that's record keeping, right? You want a system, record keep. You want a healthy bankroll, record keep. You want a handicap like a pro, record fucking keep. It's that simple. There's no way around it. If you want to improve, evolve, and actually know what works, you have to record keep. And here's the bottom line. You won't make money betting on sports unless you know your edge. Period. So bet sizing is the multiplier. It's not going to necessarily be the engine. Handicapping and market analysis come first. So before you try to optimize every single cent with the Kelly criterion or confidence betting, just focus on being profitable first. Start with fixed, maybe percentage, or even mix the two. So those will serve you well until your results are sharp enough to warrant leveling up. So keep it simple, stay disciplined, and track everything like your bankroll depends on it. Because guess what? It does. And now, before you head out, if this helped clarify some things, I want you guys to hit that like button, subscribe for more betting strategy content, and drop a comment letting us know down below which bet strategy you're going to use. And then, if you would like to see a deep dive video on each strategy with real bet examples, we read every comment and we're building this channel with you, not just for you. So, until next time, take care of yourself and take care of that bankroll.